Hello again, this is Pastor Jeff from Concordia. Happy Friday to you all. Hope you are all being safe and smart. I'm going to continue reading from James Allison's book, Knowing Jesus. It can be a little heady at times, but they're also kind of profound, simple things as well that I hope each time there's a reading that you get a nice nugget out of there, something that you connected with or is important to you. And once again, I'll end the time with a song. So Allison has just gotten done talking about how the disciples aren't just witnesses of some event that happened, a fact that they were able to see, but that they are witnesses from the resurrection of Jesus, meaning what they experienced has somehow changed and transformed them. And so he continues on. You see already, the gap between subjective and objective has disappeared. What happened out there? Jesus' appearance to the apostles and what happened in here, the transformation that this produced, are part of the same phenomenon, the presence of the risen Lord. They are not only witnesses of, but witnesses from. Furthermore, it is clear that there is no such thing as just a witness of the resurrection. It was not the sort of happening that could be witnessed casually, as I witness a rattlesnake shedding its skin. The very fact of witnessing it all meant a degree of involvement in a complex set of human relationships which culminated in their being able to witness it. That was true of all the disciples to whom Jesus appeared. Jesus' appearances to them took place within the framework of their friendship with him, their hopes concerning him, their disillusionment concerning him, their feeling of guilt at having abandoned him. Even Saul did not become a witness out of a clear sky. He became a witness precisely as his involvement in persecuting the witnesses was turned on its head. He saw the risen one simultaneously as he saw that he had been persecuting God. Because the risen one is God as persecuted. We'll be looking at that more later on. Let me fill that out a bit more fully. In all the Gospels, Jesus, who is clearly a figure of considerable charisma, attracts the following with whom he plays hard to get. He wants people to follow him, but not on their terms. He subverts their understanding of what he is doing, and indeed of what they are doing following him. He won't allow them to see him as the expected Messiah in any straightforward way, while he is happy with the category of prophet. He clearly goes beyond it, showing a power and an authority beyond Moses and Elijah and Joshua and other prophets. He always emphasizes the way in which the prophets' paths led them to a violent death. So the relationship between Jesus and his followers is shown in all the Gospels to be a highly complex one, leading them on, but constantly shifting their intentions, their motives, their understanding of what they are about. At the same time, he clearly indicates that they could only understand afterwards that he is going to be killed and that they would abandon him. For all of them, their relationship to him ends in a tragedy. Let me emphasize that again. On Good Friday, the disciples' relationship with Jesus ended because Jesus died. The relationship ended in just the same way as my relationship with my Aunt Barley ended when she died. The set of feelings, the memories, the elations and frustrations shared with or caused by Barley didn't end. They remained to be worked through by me. But the relationship ended because it was no longer mutual. So the disciples had all those loose ends of curiosity, of doubt, of commitment, of memory, but suddenly they had them in a vacuum. It was not merely a neutral vacuum as when someone loved or admired dies far away from where you are without any possibility of your having done something to prevent it. It was a tragic vacuum because one of the feelings informing it was guilt at having abandoned Jesus, a sense of moral failure. It is easy enough for us to look at St. Peter as the goody who cried after the cock crowed, and Judas as the baddie who hanged himself when he realized what he had done. But that picture hides an important similarity between them and obscures the real tragedy of Judas's death. Both betrayed Jesus along with all the others who ran away. The difference was between the type of betrayal that involves letting down your cause at a crucial point and the type that involves active collaboration with the other side. However, Judas's terminal sin was not his treachery, with all due respect to Dante, but his inability to believe in the possibility of forgiveness. what we usually call despair. Do you remember the few days in August 91 when there was an attempted coup in the former Soviet Union? I remember it well enough, and this was written on the day that the coup ended, to recall that even when the news of the coup first broke, a number of people, myself included, thought and hoped and prayed that the people would not let it happen and that it would be reversed. That is to say, when the coup was announced, there was implicit in that kind of historical event at least the possibility of its undoing. So for 60 hours we could hope and pray and watch TV and detect signs of the coup's collapse. Our relationship with Gorbachev's government was not abruptly and forever severed, as it would have been had Gorbachev been shot. That is quite different from the experience of the disciples. Their relationship with Jesus was forever and abruptly severed. They had no hope of waiting to see if Jesus would come back from the Crimea. Death was not like the Crimea. There were no signs that something might change, that God might revoke death. There was just a termination. They were left like live cables off which a computer has been yanked and burned, leaving them powerless to receive or transmit information. That, of course, led to the beginnings of mourning, probably not immediate mourning, for the shock of Jesus' arrest, death, and the disciples' disbanding was probably too great for immediate mourning. Luke gives us some idea of the early desolation of the disciples who were walking to Emmaus. And all of this took place within an atmosphere of fear. You remember that the disciples met on Easter evening behind locked doors. This was not because news of the resurrection had leaked out and they were frightened of people protesting at the new religion that was starting up, as people sometimes might think. It was because they were foreigners in the capital of a police state. They had to face two distinct lots of military figures, Jewish and Roman, and they were, by their accents and probably their dress, suspect of involvement with a major criminal who had been done away with amidst the tumultuous scenes. At the time, let us remember, they probably thought of themselves as to some degree part of a politico-messianic movement. Their understanding of what they were about was not yet that of Jesus. Witness their question to him even after the resurrection and just before the ascension. Lord, is this the time when you will restore the kingdom to Israel? All of that will have caused them to feel the danger of their own situation maybe rather more acutely than they need have. However, that fear was a dominant factor in their lives at that point need not be doubted. Now, please notice what I'm not doing here. I'm not trying to fill in a sort of historical romance, the sort of things what Mary, Queen of Scots' maid thought as mistress was led to the block at Fotheringay. I'm not trying to give an imaginary psychological description of the disciples. I'm trying rather to bring out the ordinary human responses to Jesus' death that were present. That is to say, whose absence would have been remarkable and the sign of deeply psychologically deranged personalities. These responses are either present or hinted at in the New Testament texts. The reason for this is to illustrate something of the network of relationships into which Jesus began to appear, starting on that Sunday morning. The resurrection was first perceived from within those complexes of relationships that had been left severed and dangling on the Friday before, and had been developed over the years leading up to that. The very earliest strata of the New Testament witness tells us a number of things about the resurrection, not film set details, but rather more than that. They tell us, for instance, that the resurrection was in the first place something that happened to Jesus. It seems odd to say so, but many people have a lingering feeling that perhaps the resurrection was a set of experiences in the lives of the disciples, worked maybe by God, but in the absence of Jesus, who was not in his tomb but wasn't anywhere else either. That view simply will not bear the evidence of the texts. Paul, in the first letter to the Thessalonians, probably the earliest of the New Testament texts to be written, tells us of God's Son from heaven, who he raised from the dead, Jesus. And it could not be clearer in Peter's first speech to Jerusalem in Acts. This Jesus God raised up, and of that we are all witnesses. This is clear from the way in which some of the texts refer to Jesus' resurrection as his vindication over and against his enemies. That is to say, one of the first understandings of the resurrection was that it was God showing that Jesus was right, and his enemies were wrong. This is only hinted at. Soon the disciples' understanding seems to have deepened into seeing that this was too colossal an event merely to be seen as God settling scores with a number of executioners. But there's enough of this sentiment present to show that the disciples definitely did see themselves as, if you like, onlookers at a prize fight, in which their champion was vindicated, a perception that cannot be explained by a subjective explosion of feeling about Jesus having been raised by God. First, the resurrection was seen as something that happened to Jesus, the making full of what it meant to be Lord and Messiah, that he had lived up to and into his death. Then second, it revealed something about God. For in raising Jesus from the dead, God confirmed the life and death of Jesus, affirmed the freedom and truth of Jesus' life. God gave God's self to be defined as the God who raised Jesus from the dead. A new and completely unexpected and radical new insight into who God is. Third, the resurrection began to transform the lives of the disciples. They began to be able to understand anew the life and death of Jesus and the way in which the scriptures pointed to what they had witnessed. They began to be able to rewrite their lives from an entirely unexpected new vantage point. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When my way goes drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call. Hold my hand lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When the darkness appears and the night draws near, and the day is past and gone, at the river I stand, guide my feet, hold my hand.